All right, this is lesson 10-2, part 2. We're gonna write a radical expression to represent this problem here. Travel a boat. Sounds funny. Travel 4 times as far due east as it did due south. What is the expression for the distance the boat would have traveled in a straight line from the starting point? So think about this: north, south, east, west. We just draw a quick picture. So it traveled 4 times as far due east. So this line here is 4 times as long as its south line. So maybe like that. So let's call this x, and we'll call this 4x. All right. Write an expression for the distance the boat would have traveled in a straight line from its starting point. So we went like this and then down here. So it's starting point from there to there. And if it's going due east and due south, then it's a 90-degree angle there. So we're looking for the hypotenuse. Let's just call that C. So using Pythagorean theorem, we know that 4x squared plus x squared is equal to c squared. And simplifying that, we get 16x squared plus x squared is equal to c squared. And that's 17x squared is equal to c squared. Taking the principal square root of both sides, we get c is equal to the square root of 17x squared. And that is not in simplest radical form because we have a perfect square right there, x squared. So we're going to write that as x times the square root of 17 is equal to c. And just think about that for a second. So if you travel 4 times in one direction as you do the other, and you turn a right angle, that means your distance from your starting will be square root of 17 times your due south distance. So that's kind of interesting there. All right, you can go ahead and do the same problem here. I'm just going to pause here and we can check back for your answers. All right, we're going to learn how to simplify quotients with square roots, and this property will come in handy. If we have the square root of some fraction, we can split that fraction up and do the square root of the numerator divided by the square root of the denominator. So what that means in this first problem is we can just find the square root of 121, square root of 81 separately, and we get 11 over 9. And for this one, we can do separately the square root of 27x to the 5th over the square root of 48x. And that would mean we could do, let's see, square root of 27, that has a perfect square. Square root of 9 times the square root of 3 times the square root of x to the 4th times the square root of x. And then 48, we're going to do 16 times 3 times the square root of x. Then I can simplify that. Whenever you're simplifying a fraction, if you have the same number in the numerator and denominator, that quotient is 1 and can be canceled. So we can cancel that. We can cancel that. And then we can simplify, and we get square root of 9 is 3, square root of x to the 4th is 2, square root of 16 is 4. So you could write it just as 3/4 x second. All right. You could also, I'll let you try this one. All right, what is the simplified form of each expression here? Square root of 5 over the square root of 8. Remember from yesterday that to be simplified, you cannot have a square root in the denominator. Now, here's a nice way to get rid of that. Just multiply by the square root of 8. Now, when you are changing fractions, the ratio will stay the same as long as you multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same fraction, by the same number. And the square root of 5 times the square root of 8 is the square root of 40. And the square root of 8 times the square root of 8 is 8. So now you can see we've eliminated the square root in the denominator, the radical down there. We still have a little simplifying to do. The square root of 40 has a perfect square factor of 4. And so we get 2 times the square root of 10 over 8. And 2/8 is the same as 1/4, so we could either write it as 1/4 times the square root of 10 or square root of 10 over 4. Like that way. Okay, let's do another one. Square root of 3 over the square root of 20n. Again, we have a radical in the denominator, which we can't have. And so let's multiply by the square root of 20n, and that will eliminate that because that's equal to 20n. And on the top, we're going to get the square root of 60n. And let's see, the biggest perfect square factor in 60 is 4. So we're going to write square root of 4 times the square root of 15n over 20n. Square root of 4 is 2. And 2/20ths is the same as 1/10. So we get square root of 15n over 10n. Now some of you might be thinking, well, why can't we cancel those n's? Well, this n in the numerator is really the square root of n, not n. So you couldn't cancel it with that. So that's it. All right, I'll let you try one of those. All right, let's do the lesson check. Compare and contrast. Simplify. 3 divided by the square root of 12, 2 different ways. Which do you prefer? So first it says simplify the expression, then rationalize. So what they're saying is square root of 12 is not simplified. So let's simplify that. The perfect square factor of 12 is 4. So we get 3 over 2 times the square root of 3. Now let's rationalize by multiplying them both by the square root of 3. And we get 3 times the square root of 3 over square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3 times 2 is 6. And that's equal to 1 times the square root of 3 over 6. All right. And the second way, it says rationalize the denominator, then simplify. So do this first, multiply numerator and denominator by the square root of 12. So we get that. Now we can simplify it. 3/12 is the same as 1/4. So we could do that. Square root of 12 needs to be simplified because there's a perfect square factor, so we could write it like this. And that's 2 times the square root of 3 over 4, which is the same as the square root of 3 over 2. All right, and I'm thinking I like the either way is fine. I did make a mistake this first way though when I was simplifying 3/6 is really 1/2, not 3 over 6. Sorry about that. So which do you prefer? I don't know. I don't think either way saves you any time. So I'm going to say it really doesn't matter. Although, I might say I like the second way because I didn't make the mistake like I did in the first one. All right? That's it. I'll see you tomorrow.